The Hoosiers are right back at it tonight, and are they finally going to start to turn things around at Penn State?
You are Locked On Hoosiers, your daily podcast on the Indiana Hoosiers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome into this Wednesday episode of Locked On Hoosiers, your one and only daily one-stop shop for everything IU athletics. I'm your host, as always, Jacob. I want to thank you guys for making us your first listen every single day. We've vented about IU's performance on Sunday against Northwestern. We tried to figure out who to blame on Tuesday's episode. It's time to move on and look forward because they're back in action tonight. No rest for the weary in the Big Ten as they travel to Penn State tonight, trying to turn things around, trying to get back in the win column and start a new streak, turn the page, try to get some things right. We're going to talk about all that later on in the show. Let's get you the basics. IU versus Penn State, 7 p.m. tonight in the Bryce Jordan Center. It'll be on Big Ten Network. It's a series the Hoosiers have historically dominated, 42-13 all time against Penn State. Split the season series last year. The game in Indiana, the Hoosiers won comfortably, 74-57. They were up almost 30 in the first half. One of their best performances of the season was that first half last year. Xavier had 19, Trayce had 15, Race had 18. Only one of those guys is available tonight, but you guys are well aware of that. The game in Penn State, though, that was not fun. That was an ugly game that Penn State pulled out 61-58. IU looked awful, shot the ball awful, and played from behind for a lot of that game. It just was not a fun game. Their trips to Penn State have been all over the place. The last time they were in Penn State before that, they lost by 15 in 2020, 64-49. Oh, that scoreline just peak Archie ball. 14 points from Trayce, 13 points from Justin Smith, 27 points from those two is over half of the offense. They did beat Penn State the year prior to that, but the Bryce Jordan Center just does some weird things. Everybody always remembers or at least I do, the James Blackman shot the night that OG went down with injury, his season-ending injury, the OG shot or the Blackman shot to win the game. It's not normal when Indiana goes to the Bryce Jordan Center. I don't expect it to be normal tonight for a number of reasons we're going to talk about. Coming into this one, obviously, Indiana has lost 5 of its last 8. They're 1-3 in the Big Ten. And that being said, this is the easiest opponent they will have played in the Big Ten based on KenPom rating, but only literally one spot worse than Northwestern on Sunday. Northwestern, I mean, to be quite frank, is not a good team. They're toward the bottom in the Big Ten when it comes to KenPom rating. It didn't really matter. They were whooping IU for most of that game. Penn State comes in losers of their last 2. Obviously, both Big Ten games. They lost to Michigan. They lost to Purdue. Lost to Michigan by 10. Lost to Purdue by 13. The Purdue game was at the Palestra. The Michigan game was on the road. They beat Iowa at home 83-79. A game that they led. Iowa made a big comeback, but unlike some teams, they held Iowa off. They also beat Illinois in their Big Ten opener 74-59, a game that they shot incredibly well, and they shot 50% from the field on 2s, 50% from the field on 3s. You're going to win a lot of games when you shoot that well. So a team that can play well, their only losses this season are to good teams. They don't have a bad loss. They lost to Michigan State at home. They lost to Clemson in double overtime. They lost to Virginia Tech at a neutral site. Those are their only losses. this season. So they've beaten some good teams. They've lost to good teams. It's going to be a tough matchup. It's not, there are no easy nights in the Big Ten, as cliche as it might sound. The Big Ten is a competitive conference, if nothing else. Stacking it up against other conferences might be something different, but it is a competitive conference. To that point, Penn State is actually favored by KenPom to win this game. 73-72, 49%, 51% chance Penn State wins. IU has a 49% win probability. It's a toss-up. A 1-point game with a 51-49 split is a toss-up. There are no true 50-50 splits in KenPom. So this is 100% a toss-up. Neither team's coming in high necessarily. It's just IU is coming in much lower than Penn State is. And it's a road game. And IU didn't look good on the road in any of their last 3 trips on the road, losing at Rutgers, losing at Kansas. They did look decent at Iowa, but ultimately it comes in a loss as well. So it's going to be a tough one. BetOnline actually has IU as a 2.5-point underdog, which I can't blame them. I was surprised a little bit that they're 2.5-point underdogs, but the way they're playing right now, can you blame them for making IU underdogs? I wouldn't. I have no idea what to tell you in terms of betting on IU, betting on Penn State, the money lines, whatever that is. You can go with your gut there. What I would tell you to do, the over-under is 142. Hammer that. I don't think it's going to be – I think this is going to be well over 142. Penn State likes to get out and run. IU can't defend anybody, and their offense hasn't really been a problem. So this is probably going to look something closer to the 84-83 scoreline from the Northwestern game, I think, than 73-72 or 72-70 to meet that over-under. So hammer the over would be my recommendation. Speaking of BetOnline, they are the sponsor of today's episode. BetOnline is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, whether it is pro football, whether it's college basketball, NBA, soccer is back. They have got it all at betonline.net. They're the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. Big thanks to you guys for making Locked On Hoosiers your first listen every day. Make sure you check out the brand new podcast, Locked On College Basketball. Everything you need to know about college basketball in one place. Like Kentucky losing again. Is Calipari going to Texas? I don't know. I wouldn't hate it. At least somebody is joining us in misery this season. Plus, you'll hear from big name experts, insiders, coaches, and players. Locked On College Basketball, available on YouTube and wherever you get podcasts. I recorded a segment we're going to throw to here in just a second with Locked On Penn State, Locked On Nittany Lions, a crossover episode. Going to throw to that, and then we'll come back for the last segment and do a little more IU focused preview of tonight's game. So let's go talk to Zach over at Locked On Nittany Lions.
It is a Locked On crossover, and let's cross it over with Locked On Hoosiers, and that is Jacob Rude joining me on the other side. I'm Zach Seyko, your host of Locked On Nittany Lions. Jacob, it's good to get together again. Different circumstances, as Penn State is much better at football than the Hoosiers, but when it comes to men's basketball, the same cannot be said. It is completely flipped, but for the most part, usually that's the case. As of right now, and just an episode ago, I was hyping up Indiana and said, this is a tough team. They were, at the time of the recording, they were ranked 15th. They were pretty respectable, but now they're 1-3 in the Big Ten. And there's just, I think the way you phrased it beforehand, so I'll let you expand upon this, is that Indiana is in panic mode. How true is that statement?
Yeah, well, fans are certainly in panic mode. It's up for debate whether they should be panicking yet. It has not been a good start to Big Ten play. They are 1-3 in the Big Ten. They've lost 5 of their last 8 games. 2 of those are Arizona and Kansas. But nonetheless, It's the last two losses, losing at Iowa, a game that you led by 21 points in the first half, and then Northwestern on Sunday, where you let a pretty mediocre Northwestern offense score 84 points on you at home. It started ringing some alarm bells. The biggest issue right now, though, is that IU has just been destroyed by injuries this season.
Yeah.
Of those games mentioned, IU has not had its starting five, but for like its preferred starting five, but for 10 minutes in the Kansas game. They've only had them for a small handful of the games this season, and now it's going to be a while before they have that starting five again. So it's kind of trying to figure some things out on the fly with this team right now.
Yeah, and that's why we're doing a Locked On crossover here, right, Jacob? Because the Nittany Lions and the Hoosiers are getting ready to play. Depending on when you listen or watch this, it is going to be a tip-off in the Bryce Jordan Center Wednesday night between Penn State and Indiana. I mean, this is a game that Indiana probably sees as a definite win, or 9 times out of 10 they win this game. But now this becomes a must-win for both teams, and personally, I like the matchup much more. Now, I discussed this on a previous episode, just kind of a look ahead for Penn State, because they had lost the game in the Palestra to Purdue. They lost the game to Michigan, and those are both very tough teams. They're well-coached teams, and they're just teams that don't exactly match up well with Penn State because that profile of just being big in the front court, it's something that Penn State was aware of from the beginning, where they said, you know what, team speed and shooting will be able to counter that. So far, at least against those teams, the way things have happened, it's nothing out of the ordinary, I would say. Things are kind of status quo for Penn State. They're better, they're more competitive, they're more exciting to watch, but I'm kind of off the bandwagon of this was a surefire tournament team. Indiana gets back Trayce Jackson-Davis. I was watching the game against Iowa. I watched most of the first half just to kind of say, all right, let me scout some, Penn State competition. They beat Iowa convincingly while they almost blew the lead in the second half. So in Iowa's case, that's not uncharacteristic for them because they almost made the comeback against Penn State in the Bryce Jordan Center on New Year's Day, and then they happened to do it against Indiana. So getting Trayce Jackson-Davis back, is he 100%? Is he close to it? Because I look at him and I say that's Penn State's biggest problem, literally, going into this game.
He is not 100%.
That's good news for us.
Well, less than 100%, Trayce Jackson-Davis had 18 points, 24 rebounds, and 8 assists against Northwestern.
Never mind. Forget what I said.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think it's good news, but he is certainly not 100%.
Okay.
He did not play before the holidays. He played against Kansas on the 17th and then didn't play again until January 5th against Iowa, the game you watched. But it's a back injury, and those just don't go away, basically. It's just kind of this lingering thing. He doesn't look to be he looks to be in discomfort throughout games, but on Thursday against Iowa, he played 38 minutes. And then on Sunday against Northwestern, he played 40 minutes. And he said, I'm not in great shape, but my team needs me right now. So he isn't 100%, but he had 30-9 against Iowa, and he had 18, 24, and 8 against Northwestern. So he's still playing really well. It's going to be interesting, though, because it's been replacing Race Thompson, the other forward in the front court, that has been IU's problem. So it'll be interesting to see how Penn State kind of approaches this, and if IU is able, on paper, there are ways that they have advantages in the front court, but the games aren't played on paper, and IU has struggled in a number of areas since losing those guys to injury.
So Penn State is getting at least a more favorable matchup in this case, just because Indiana's missing guys like Race Thompson. It's not a 100% Trayce Jackson-Davis, and Xavier Johnson's out. I do worry about Hood-Schifino. He's the freshman that everyone's been talking about preseason. He was kind of the all Big Ten team consensus, even in contention for Big Ten Player of the Year nominations. And some people had him winning. So I respect his game, but he doesn't have the same cast around him. Now, if you look at Ken Palm, Vegas is, depending on when you watch and listen to this, the spread might be out already, but Vegas is a little behind. But if you look at Ken Palm, and I do subscribe to Ken Palm's rankings, he has this as about a 1 to 2 point advantage for Indiana. So I imagine that the spread's going to be 1.5, maybe 2 points coming out of Vegas, with Indiana coming into Happy Valley. Jacob, for you, what is the most concerning aspect about Penn State's team right now that you think doesn't match up well with this version of Indiana?
Well, this version of Indiana really struggles defensively. And Xavier Johnson was the best kind of point of attack defender, did well defending ball handlers. Race Thompson was really good at defending forwards and switching on to guys. They were IU's two best defenders. Without them, IU has struggled. They gave up 91 to Iowa. They gave up 84 to Northwestern. So any team that it feels like any team right now that has kind of a semi-competent offense and an ability to get to the rim is going to find success. And so just kind of looking at the amount of guards and who Penn State has, it's concerning just kind of their play style because IU just can't really stop anybody right now. Trayce is still a really good rim protector, but Northwestern on Sunday was just driving right at him and then dumping it off for dunks or layups because he would have to try to alter the shot at the rim. So it's a bit of a mess right now defensively. I mean, offensively, IU isn't having that many issues. They scored 89 against Iowa, 84 or 83 against Northwestern. It's getting like consistent stops that is the biggest issue. And I mean, it looks like Penn State's kind of built to take advantage of that.
That's good news over here, especially since I just kind of ravaged against Penn State. I just don't, just because of the way things, and I feel like I owe a further explanation of, it's not that Penn State can't compete for an NCAA tournament berth. Just at the end of the day, if you're asking me yes or no, is it going to happen? Right now, my answer is no, because of I just imagine that they're going to need a Big Ten tournament run. And if they happen to run into a Michigan or a Purdue, that's just the kryptonite at this point. So an Indiana team like this actually does, I think, help Penn State's confidence here, because Penn State's best strengths when they are on is shooting the basketball. But I feel like they need more of those performances. And how often can you replicate that? The Illinois game, Jacob, if you saw any of it, Penn State was shooting 60% plus in that game. And that's going to win you basketball games every single time. But I don't know how many times you have to do that. Jacob, just for, your strategy or just understanding the opponent's side of it, Andrew Funk seems to be the X factor in this case, because whenever he is shooting lights out and he's shooting 50 to 60%, Penn State's going to win the basketball game 99 times out of 100. When he's held to 3 points or just a couple of baskets, it seems like Penn State is nowhere to be found, and they're easily controllable here. So I like a high-scoring game in this one, just from what you've told me, and the way that I think Trayce Jackson-Davis will have his way. He'll get his. Penn State's not going to be able to limit him because there really aren't reinforcements in the front court to defend against him. It's just a matter of, is Penn State going to come out shooting red hot, or are they going to be ice cold again? And they can't have a complete game. It seems like one half is one way and the other half is the other way. And they, like the game against Iowa, great first half, and then almost blew it completely in the second half. And the same thing can be said for the Furman game that they played earlier in the season. And Furman should be an NCAA tournament team when they win their conference championship. That's what it's going to take for them being a mid-major. But besides the point, they are a good team in the mid-majors. But I think this will be exciting for people that love offense in college basketball. But I don't really have a read as to say who wins. I would like to say Indiana here, because I just still think they have some better all-around talent. But being that it's a home game, I could easily see Penn State pulling it out. And that's just the case of Indiana's got injuries and Penn State's better at home. They've showed that. And they're a well-coached team at the end of the day. They haven't lost any bad games, but they've lost to Michigan and Purdue. But I think they're just kind of that middle of the pack Big Ten team. They should finish around 500 in conference, and then we'll see what unfolds for them in the Big Ten tournament. I think Indiana, once they get the band back together, they're scary. This is kind of when I want to play them, when they're banged up like this.
Yeah, this is a good time to face Indiana, because if we can get things back on track and if we can get healthy, theoretically, I mean, when Indiana's had its starting five together, they beat Xavier on the road, a true road game. They beat UNC, a couple of wins that are going to look good at the end of the season. So in theory, when they've been healthy, they've been able to compete with some really good teams, but yeah, they're far from it right now. It's going to be a matter for IU. In each of those two games, Iowa and Northwestern, Trayce and Jalen Hood-Schifino, who you mentioned, Jalen had to take over with Xavier Johnson going down. He was playing kind of more of a shooting guard. He's a natural point guard, and he kind of took the reins and has gotten a little bit better, and then scored 21 and with 9 assists against Iowa, which was a career high, and then just blew that out of the water and scored 33 against Northwestern. Jalen and Trayce combined to score 51 points in these games. They each came in losses. So it's kind of right now, those two are playing at a really high level. It's just, can they get any sort of production from the guys around them, that a lot of them have had to step into roles that are bigger than they're used to with injuries. So they'll have a couple days here to figure some things out after losing to Northwestern. But I mean, winning on the road in the Big Ten is hard. Winning in the Big Ten is hard. You were talking about how tough it is and how the uphill climb Penn State's going to have to get into the tournament. And I mean, the Big Ten doesn't lend itself to trying to figure some things out or anything like that. IU really could use a soft part of the schedule to figure out how to get guys into new roles, and they instead have to go to Penn State. They have Michigan State coming up. They have Wisconsin. There just isn't any easy stretches in the Big Ten. So, man, winning on the road, like I said, is hard. Just because of the advantage I think Trayce is going to have, I think he could have a really monster night.
Yeah.
Maybe IU is able to finally ride him to a win, and that is kind of the main thing I'm basing this on. But this is going to be a close game, and like you said, we don't have the Vegas odds out, but take the over. Whatever it is,
yeah,
IU can't play defense right now, so just take the over.
And Penn State's going to try to play fast. There's no reason for them to slow it down. They need to go fast and hit some transition threes. And they are at home, so they can try to play the way that they want to. Jacob, before I let you go, how can the best way for people to connect with you and Locked On Hoosiers?
Yeah, we are just at LO_Hoosiers on Twitter, at Jacob Rude on Twitter, for those that are watching on YouTube can see. And then wherever you guys are listening to this at, you can listen to Locked On Hoosiers. We're available just the same way you Locked On Nittany Lions is every day during the week.
Yep, appreciate that, Jacob. Always great to catch up, and this time to talk some men's basketball. Hopefully we can get together again soon to talk college sports for Penn State and Indiana. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, as always. So you heard Zach and I talk. Let's take a quick break, and then we'll come back and talk about some IU-related things, about how all this is going to pan out for the Hoosiers. So the biggest thing for me looking at this game is, if not now, when it comes to a response from the Hoosiers. You've had a lot of time to think about the two losses you've had, to hear people talk about the two losses you've had, to digest that, to digest the injury to Trayce Thompson. It's time to pull up the pants and get back at it. If you're not going to have a response after this game, you probably aren't going to have one. There's very little time to really start to save this Big Ten season. You're at 1-3 already. This is your easy stretch. You have got to get it right now. So that's the biggest thing to me is IU even going to have a response from this one? If they are, it's probably going to come on the back of Trayce Jackson-Davis. You heard Zach and I talk. Penn State is a fascinating team to look at on KenPom, because they just have no interior presence. They're a good offense and above average defense. They don't play, their tempo doesn't look like one that plays particularly fast. We'll see how that translates. Zach certainly said that they go, go, go. We'll see how that translates. I would imagine teams are going to do something similar to that. Northwestern did that on Sunday. They're not going to turn the ball over. They are first in the country in turnover percentage. They do not turn the ball over in any way. They're going to have a good offense. They're going to shoot three-pointers well. They're going to shoot free throws well. But they're one of the worst teams in the nation, 358th in offensive rebound percentage, 362nd in the free throws to field goals attempted, and 243rd in block percentage. What that tells me is they're going to hoist a lot of three-pointers. They're going to make a lot of those shots. They're probably going to be able to get to the rim on Wednesday tonight. But this is not a team that particularly thrives in the interior, inside the paint. The counter to that, defensively, Lord, do they not force any sort of turnovers. 349th in the country. Whether live ball, whether steals, they don't block anybody. And they're mediocre defending the three-pointer. They actually are decent at not allowing offensive rebounds, which is interesting, considering how much they struggle on the other end. They literally do not attempt to grab offensive rebounds. A fascinating thing. But Trayce is going to feast is what all this means. There is nobody on this roster that is going to be able to handle him. So how much is he going to be able to carry IU physically and figuratively? This is a Penn State team that shoots 27.9 threes per game. So not even that many. It's just they're an efficient shooting team. But there's nobody, like I said, in the interior that is any kind of threat. Their tallest guy that does any kind of scoring is 6'6" Seth Lundy. So Trayce is going to get his chances. Also, is this a get-right game for Malik Reneau and Jordan Geronimo? We saw how much Malik dominated when there wasn't anybody at his size early in the season. Can he do something like that and get right for the Hoosiers tonight? We'll see if that's the case, but another example of, like, if not now, when. It's not as much urgency there, but boy, Indiana could really use a big game from Geronimo and or Malik Reneau. They themselves can use a big game to try to get some confidence going again. The forward should be licking their chops in this one and seeing that Penn State front line. Do we see Logan Duncombe potentially? He hasn't played a lot, but with a team that is as bad as they are in the interior, does IU try to turn to him to try to spell Trayce a little bit? We will see how that goes. Is Jalen Hood-Schifino going to continue his hot play? He had 2 really, really good games. It seems like he's really coming into his own. To that note, though, boy, do I really want him to cut down the turnovers. And Mike Woodson said as much on his radio show on Monday. He's been fantastic. You can't really blame him for anything, considering especially how the rest of the Hoosiers have not showed up. It's hard to point any fingers at Jalen, who has stepped up in both of those games, but at the same time, 6 turnovers against Northwestern, and a lot of them were of the frustrating variety. Turnovers have been an issue for him. He's averaging 3.3 per game. Can he get that under control? Can he continue his hot stretch? We're going to see. Like I said before, we're going to have a live show once the game finishes around 9:30, 10 o'clock. We're going to go live, talk about this one, try to figure out, hopefully, how the Hoosiers came away with a victory. But thanks again, guys, for making Locked On Hoosiers your first listen every day. We'll be back with you tomorrow night, or we'll be back tomorrow morning. Tonight, if you're listening to this on Wednesday, join us for the live show for the recap. For your second listen, check out the brand new podcast, Locked On College Basketball. Experts Isaac Shade and Andy Patton bring you everything you need to know on and off the court. Plus, hear from big-name experts, coaches, and players throughout the basketball landscape. Locked On College Basketball, available on YouTube and wherever you get podcasts. Follow us wherever you guys listen to us at. Subscribe, all of that great stuff. Most importantly, though, guys, everybody have a great Wednesday. Go Hoosiers and LEO.